As someone who has always chiefly enjoyed playing single player games, I feel like I've spent the last 10 years being constantly bombarded with fear-mongering nonsense suggesting that the shift away from such games and towards more always online multiplayer experiences is inevitable. Now, I don't personally believe that's the case, but the reality is that the games industry, like any industry, is going to naturally gravitate towards producing products which make them the most money. And as terms like live service or games as a service have wormed their way into the lexicon, it's become increasingly clear that they stand to make a lot of money from monetizing these always online and evolving multiplayer experiences. With the rise of live service, there have been some very dark spots, where great developers have delivered terrible multiplayer products when they could have been making good single-player stuff. But I also think there have been some genuinely great releases which should be celebrated by anyone who likes video games. Inside these numerous games, there have also been some truly heinous examples of microtransactions. But there have also been some instances where the cost of in-game cosmetics is more than offset by the value and depth of gameplay on offer. In the end, there have been some big successes and huge failures, but they haven't managed to kill off single-player games yet. For what it's worth, I don't think that big-budget single-player games are ever going away, so long as people keep buying them. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the ways that we're served these games change as the behemoths of the industry fight to keep people on their platforms. I also think that focused single-player experiences are safe so long as these big-budget live service endeavours continue to flop en masse and prove to be risky endeavours, all of which I'll get into later. First of all though, I'd like to demonstrate where we are in this world of ever-evolving online gaming by focusing in on a game which has proven itself to be one of, if not the most powerful live service products in the industry. The beloved, or dreaded, depending on who you ask, Fortnite. Few gamers would have gone this long without coming into contact with Fortnite in one way or another. Whether or not you enjoy playing or have even tried Fortnite, I don't think that anyone can deny its impact on the industry. Nor can you deny the impressive scale or complexity of what Epic Games continues to deliver with the game and its tremendously popular Battle Royale mode. Over 6 years after its first season, Fortnite continues to offer seasonal updates as well as more regular changes to the loot pool week by week. It also continues to make lots of money for Epic Games through the variety of cosmetics available in its item shop. And it continues to be an extremely fun Battle Royale mode to play with friends, I think. As the seasons have passed though, Fortnite has evolved into something more than just a game. It's become what a grizzled games industry executive would probably call a platform in and of itself. And it's all a bit strange, frankly. It's clear that the Battle Royale modes are still where most players are, and it's likely that will continue to be their bread and butter for some time. But recently they've started to build out a new vision for their live service platform, which involves diversifying the types of modes that they have on offer. LEGO Fortnite here seems to be a big success in giving them a Minecraft type mode. And the other two pillars of this new approach are Rocket Racing, a party style racing game, and Fortnite Festival, a Guitar Hero-esque rhythm mode. These are both interesting. The problem, as I see it, is that, as far as I'm aware, the most successful incarnations of both of these genres have been not online multiplayer experiences, but local split-screen stuff. Mario Kart, to this day, continues to be a phenomenon on Nintendo Switch, just as it was on Nintendo's previous home consoles and portable devices. And while it's had an online component for a while now, I still think the core fun of that game is playing split screen on the couch or with the screen out on the table. With the Nintendo Wii, Mario Kart was the quintessential party game. I think it's fair to say that Rocket Racing isn't nearly as fun as Mario Kart to begin with either. Clearly it lacks the variety of throwable items and interesting maps that game had. Even when Rocket Racing's maps are quite visually interesting, They're only really a normal road laid over a unique background and not integrated in the way they are in Mario Kart. The cars are also a lot faster in a way that just doesn't feel that fun. I just don't really know who they're trying to appeal to here. Fans of Rocket League have already got that game and it's really quite a different experience. People who want a semi-realistic driving game are going to go to Gran Turismo or Forza, and those who want a fun party game will go to Mario Kart. Putting aside that Rocket Racing simply doesn't have the same fun factor as Mario Kart, it's also just not as fun to play online with friends. It's not like in Battle Royale where you can exchange loot or tactics over voice chat, because here you're actually competing against one another. And given there's not that much you can do to actually interact with other players in a game, it's just not that enjoyable. In the same room, at least, you can very easily see who's winning and hurl well-timed insults at one another. The same in many ways goes for Fortnite Festival, which seems like a very well-built Guitar Hero-esque experience, but with a few important caveats. Firstly, obviously, it's not packaged with a unique Fortnite guitar controller, which was a huge part of the overall package back in the Rock Band Guitar Hero days. They're offering support for old controllers you might have lying around, and there are some third-party newer offerings being made available, but without a specific Fortnite guitar controller, it all feels a bit niche, and only attractive to those few die-hard fans who've been rocking out consistently since 2005. If they really wanted to make this mode work, why would they not just produce a cheap plastic guitar controller shaped like a llama? Partly I think it's because they want to sell you unique instruments in-game and not in real life. But still, Guitar Hero and Rock Band were popular back in the day, I think mostly because they were fun to play with friends and family. Even if you only had the one controller, it was just fun to sit back and watch people become a rock star for a moment. Mashing buttons on a keyboard or controller with your friends online just simply isn't as fun to the casual player. And again, there is very limited interaction with other players online. It's clear they're trying to make the Guitar Hero experience as on-screen as possible, rather than supporting the in-the-room fun that these games had before. I understand that people in general probably don't play as many split-screen games as they used to, but I think that's a problem of not enough split-screen games being produced, and not that gamers are wholly uninterested in them. I don't have any statistics, but I think that the Nintendo Switch's continued success has to speak to that at least to some extent. Same goes for the relative success of those rare split-screen games like It Takes Two. I think Fortnite is making a big mistake by not supporting or even actively promoting split-screen experiences, but it's clear that in the end it doesn't align with their live service goals. If that goal is to become a sort of metaverse and keep us all in our own separate boxes connected purely online, then I guess that makes sense. But if Fortnite wants to become the platform, the hub for multiplayer game experiences, then it seems silly not to support split screen. It's clear that the investment is there for Fortnite to expand most of its offerings, but my hope is that they can provide more experiences which bring us together in one room as much as online. On top of all this, the store items for both modes seem outrageously priced for what you're actually getting. They dropped the prices on the car packs and yet they're still absurd. Same goes for the instruments and the various jam tracks. Basically it feels like unless you're extremely invested in one of these modes, you're not even going to consider buying anything. And maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe they're fine with these both being very niche modes, so long as they can milk the few hardcore fans dry with these microtransactions. That said, I think if most of these were half the price they were, they'd sell a heck of a lot more. I could easily see myself picking up a Pat Benatar or Weezer track in-game if they were a bit cheaper, especially if you could use them as lobby music. I also think that people would be more likely to pay for specific tracks to play in Fortnite Festival if they could do it split screen. And by the way, I think the racing store stuff would be significantly more attractive if they had gone for karts instead of cars. I mean, just consider the variety of unique and interesting gliders available in the game, and think about how much cooler it would have been if they had done karts in that style. It would also mean that you'd be able to see your character in game when driving. And think about what they could have done with the collaborations as well. I would definitely be more likely to pick up a Millennium Falcon cart and ride around as Han Solo than anything else. It just feels like if they want to build out Fortnite as the platform for all of your gaming needs, they should be focused on making it actually fun before they look at monetization. It's a dark glimpse into the future though if you consider a world where a game like Fortnite has a total monopoly and are able to charge whatever they want for anything. I think a lot of their prices are the most reasonable of any games at the moment, but I can't imagine they're going to stay that way if they become more and more successful. In the end, I think they're going to do whatever they need to win the war against the other live service games. Now, it's hard to accurately gauge the number of daily active players of every game available today, but Fortnite is certainly near the top of the list, and at several points has probably taken a significant lead. It's also regularly one of the most watched games on platforms like Twitch. Obviously though, there are other games which have been consistently popular for longer, like Counter-Strike or Dota, and of course you can't ignore the beast that is Call of Duty. Honestly, I'm not qualified to tell you what is the most popular multiplayer game of all time, but Fortnite is definitely up there. And in terms of live service vision, the only other game that seems to compare in my mind is Roblox. As someone who has never actually touched the game though, I feel I can only talk about it in the most general terms. I don't want to offend any Roblox fans out there, but honestly I've just never seen a clip of the game which has ever made me really want to play it. I'm just not sure I get the vibe. But if it's targeted at younger people, generally speaking, then I guess that's fine, so long as it isn't actually evil like some people suggest it is. I really hope for the sake of the children that it isn't evil. I'm sure it has to be substance over style given how popular the game is, and clearly something about it is fun and addictive, but I'm just not sure it's something I ever want to try anytime soon. Roblox has an enormous player base. Several estimates put it way above Fortnite, but I'm sure it goes up and down, and I wouldn't like to make assumptions based on statistics that I'm not sure are entirely accurate. Either way though, it's clearly a big deal. Regardless, it seems like Roblox really led the way with its player-created content, and Fortnite is slowly catching up with its creative offerings and the Unreal editor for Fortnite. And even if you like Roblox, Fortnite to me seems like the more obviously high-end, polished product of the two. That bears out, I think, when you see that Fortnite is the gaming platform, which has proven itself the most worthy of investments from outside brands time and time again. I understand Roblox has had its fair share of brand collaborations, including Gucci, Adidas and Spotify for some reason, and so long as it remains viable, I'm sure that these brand partnerships will increase in the future. But it's clear that Fortnite is where the big brands are placing their bets. Lego, Disney, just about every film you could possibly imagine has had a collaboration, and so too have several musicians and sports people. The list is basically endless. Lego's investment seems to be paying off already with their mode, and it gives them a better foothold in the digital world. And Disney is betting on Epic Games to bring their brand to the Fortnite player base in a big way too. Regardless, I don't think there will be a clear winner in the Fortnite Roblox battle for some time, if ever, because they've both clearly built substantial player bases for their individual games. But I do think that Fortnite presents itself much better than Roblox to companies and brands, with maybe the exception of Apple. And that's going to be important as they look to the future and towards bringing in new players who might have never even considered playing the game before. Once Epic Games has run out of people who love multiplayer games to bring into Fortnite, where do they go next? I firmly believe that over time they intend to attract more and more people who chiefly play single player games. The Alan Wake 2 collaboration last year was super interesting to me for a few reasons. Obviously it mainly arose from Epic Games publishing Alan Wake 2 and looking to promote it inside Fortnite to a slightly different audience. But it goes the other way too. If you bought Alan Wake 2 in the Epic Games store, then you got the Alan Wake skin to use inside Fortnite. And maybe that is enough to convince you to try out the game if you never have before. I don't think you could come up with a game which is more obviously attractive to just people who like single player than Alan Wake 2. so it was a bit strange to see. Perhaps even more interesting was this game mode they had inside Fortnite, which essentially recapped the entire story of the first Alan Wake game. This was a really well produced, bespoke mini experience in essence, but one which was focused on a single player narrative. I couldn't tell you whether or not we'll end up seeing full, big budget, single player experiences launching inside of Fortnite, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me at this stage, and it would surely drag a whole new player base into the game, which is what they want in the end. It's a little bit scary to say the least, not because I actively dislike Fortnite, but because I don't really want to play every game inside that game and on that same engine. Obviously, it could easily end up homogenizing games over time. There are many other interesting moves that Epic Games are making to bring more players into Fortnite. They've announced, finally, that a first-person mode is coming soon, and that'll be super interesting to see. Clearly, this allows them to compete more directly with other types of live service or multiplayer games, like Apex Legends or Call of Duty in this case. Whether they can attract that crowd away from those games remains to be seen, but I think the success of the no-build mode proves that these fundamental changes to the game can bring in new players. They're also bringing Fall Guys into Fortnite, which is kind of crazy. Obviously, that game was huge in its time, and it still has a loyal fan base, but clearly the developers saw more value in putting the game on the Fortnite platform as they look towards the future. I would not be surprised at all to see more instances like this in the future, where smaller developers fold their games into the Fortnite platform in order to stand a greater chance of success with the already built-in player base. The Fall Guys collaboration suggests the worrying possibility that Fortnite could end up with a monopoly over all sorts of genres of games, and not just the Battle Royale. Arguably, they are now the only fully supported big budget rhythm game on the market with Fortnite Festival. When there are so many games competing for people's attention, it makes sense that something like Fall Guys would want to be functionally part of the Fortnite platform. In that way, they don't have to convince people to reinstall the game just to play their latest update, because if they have Fortnite, it's already there. I can see how it naturally appeals to a developer like that then. In the end, as Fortnite chases onboarding every kind of player, they leave the more focused multiplayer games in a precarious position. Obviously, there are still standalone multiplayer games which have had brief moments of immense success lately. Power World and Lethal Company come to mind, as does Helldivers 2. That said, the vast majority of multiplayer releases these days either have some small success and then lose all their player base, or struggle from the very beginning, especially if they don't have a solid plan for keeping players around long term. And even when they do, it's not a sure thing. I think the Finals is a seriously fun game, and I enjoyed it enough that I even picked up the Battle Pass. But I worry that despite a good start, it will have an uphill battle on its hands to grow or even maintain its player base. I also found Halo Infinite's multiplayer extremely fun when that first launched, but they did a terrible job at keeping things fresh and lost a lot of players as a result. Even though the game is in a much better state now, I doubt it can ever fully recover, and I know I personally haven't been back in a while. There are also games like the Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones, which are just the latest examples of live service offerings being made by studios who have traditionally focused on single player stuff. In almost all of these cases, you get a weird hybrid game which isn't especially fun to play multiplayer, but isn't fun single player either. Take the Avengers, Redfall and Anthem if you want just a few examples. Neither Suicide Squad nor Skull and Bones seem to have performed well early on, and it remains to be seen how well they'll be supported into the future. What I find super interesting about these types of games is that the live service aspect seems to be the thing that is putting people off more than it is attracting them to the games. The thing is, if you're someone who is mainly interested in single player experiences, like I am, then something like the Suicide Squad or the Avengers before it just doesn't feel like it's targeted at me. There are still plenty of recent single player games that I haven't gotten round to, as well as lots of old games that I'd like to replay. So in the end, I'd rather go for one of them than risk playing a sort of half-assed, can't commit, sort of multiplayer, maybe single player, games as a service type mess. I look at the Suicide Squad and go, no thanks, I'll pass, even though if it had been purely single player, it would have certainly been on my list at least. On the other hand, if you're someone who loves multiplayer games and that's mainly what you play, then you probably already have a game that you're committed to, if not several, and a new live service game has to go a long way to convince you it's worth picking up. Helldivers 2 clearly succeeded in that regard, but only because it offered something a bit different that was built from the ground up to be a fun multiplayer experience. So to summarise, single player gamers are mostly sticking to the unambiguously single player games, and multiplayer gamers are sticking generally to the games they're already playing, making it harder and harder for anything multiplayer to do well in the long term, even if it seems to have success in the beginning. The most successful live service games are not only fun to begin with, but are necessarily designed above all to keep you playing, because they know that if they lose you as a player, they might never get you back. And very few developers have the resources to sustain that long term. What that means then is that either a big game has to screw up bad enough to lose some players, or a new game has to be great enough to win them over and keep them there, which is an almost impossible feat. The thing I find really fascinating is that even the biggest single player video game flops can still basically make a comeback, inasmuch as that game is technically complete, and if you play it in 3 years' time as opposed to when it's new, the only thing that's really changed aside from small updates is context. But if you don't play a game like The Finals now, then in a year's time it could be completely different, or could even have been taken offline. I don't think it will be in that case, but it's not out of the question, because it's happened to many games before. So there is that time pressure there, but it's also another reason why a player might choose to stick with one of the bigger games like Fortnite, because they can be significantly more confident that that game isn't going to suddenly shut down and lose them all of their items and progress. There's nothing actually stopping that from happening to any of these live service games though. If they stop making money, or simply if the people in charge decide they're not worth running anymore. There's something weird and ethereal about the whole setup which creates FOMO, yes, but it also means that every time a game like Fortnite updates itself, it leaves behind a part of itself which will never be played again. And that really seems quite sad to me as someone who believes in the importance of game preservation. Ultimately, after everything I've said here, the truth is that we can only play so many games, and there are only so many people around to even be playing. I just hope that the relentless battle to win players over doesn't result in a world where there is only Fortnite and Roblox left. Thanks for watching this video, and feel free to subscribe if you'd like to hear me talk about more video game stuff. Otherwise, I'll see you next time around.